Hi, and welcome to Boomcast, the podcast from boombox.io. I'm Noise London.
I'm Music by Lucas.
Today on our podcast, we have a guest all the way from the Netherlands who has worked his way up the ranks to work at one of the best studios, which used to be owned by Red Bull Music Academy. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thomas is an amazing mixing engineer who works with an analog console and some of the finest gear that money can buy. Thomas, how has that affected your day-to-day as an engineer working in such a prestigious studio?
Well, first of all, it's a lot of fun because you've got all the gear that you always dream of, everybody always dreams of. And as a beginning engineer producer, I also dreamt of a lot. So it makes it a lot of fun. You can just go ahead and do a mix all on the SSL console on a day. You can try all the pieces of gear. I've got an entire live room that I can reamp guitars, reamp drums. You basically use as an echo chamber if I want to. So we do a lot of stuff in the box nowadays, and I mix a lot of in the box.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to take that out of the box and I do it way too little, but I wish I have more time to experiment with that stuff. But it's a lot of fun just to make everything really physical and out of the box, literally.
Yeah, I mean, for one question I have is for producers who maybe don't have access to a studio like you do, obviously. What do what are the biggest differences between like a studio like yours and like someone with a laptop? And can producers with just a laptop expect to get really good mixes without, the big fancy studio?
Yeah, definitely. You can get there with anything. It's just that I've found that it makes life a little bit easier sometimes if you have a ton of gear in a room. But the thing that makes life the easiest is having good monitors in a good acoustically treated room. Uh, that's that's number one. You could take all the gear away from me, but take the acoustics and the monitors away, and I'd have a hard time mixing. I could go completely in the
Do
box.
you mix primarily on monitors, or do you ever use headphones, or do you go back and forth, or
I do use both. So I mix a big percentage, like 50, 60% at home. There I've got ATC monitors, which is not really common for a home studio. It's a bit too high end for a home studio. But I decided to go for them because they work perfectly, and then I use biodynamic headphones to jack, but also my phone and my AirPods get used regularly. And my car is a really,
the
really
car
good
test?
thing. The car test. Yeah, definitely.
You obviously love your studio. I love your studio. Who wouldn't love your studio? It's an
Right?
amazing space, not just to listen back to and mix in, but just to work in and be isolated from the outside world. But I just want to recall a story that you told me very recently. We all met at NAM and we
Yeah.
hung out, and Thomas had a mixed you within like 24 hours of being there. And so he shut himself in his hotel room, and you did it on headphones, right? You did this mix with your
Yeah.
UAD Apollo and on headphones. And by chance, the next day, if I'm correct, you were able to go to an Amphion monitor hearing test, right, for their new monitors, right? And this is just to inspire everyone out there. And this is coming from Thomas, who does work, like I said, at one of the best studios in Amsterdam. Everyone at that Amphion testing was like, "Oh my god, this mix is so good."
Yeah. Yeah. So it was crazy. I just got a call. Like, first they asked me like, "Hey, can you master this?" And I already did a version of the mix, but they rearranged it and they swapped everything out for strings. And they asked me, "Hey, we did the mix. Can you master it so we can get it done?" And I was like, "I've got my previous mix, and I'm showing it to you." And they were like, "Oh fuck, we need to get it to this level.
Yeah.
So can you do that?" And I'm like, I'm in LA right now. Like I don't have the studio. I guess, yes, fuck it. I brought my headphones and wasn't even an Apollo, it was a Volt. So I was like really 300 euro setup.
Yeah.
But hey, let's go.
Thomas,
Uh,
quickly, which headphones are you using, just so everyone knows?
I used the DT990s then, and now I am the new ones, the 900X, they're called, I think. Um, they're great. I use them both actually because I'm so attached to my 990s that I still go back and forth, but the 900s are really great as well. But yeah, basically I saw that there was this Amphion event and I hopped in the car that I rented and normally I do the car check
Yeah.
and I just noticed that in the car every song sounded like shit. I got in the car, played the mix completely sounded like shit, and I was like, okay, car check, done, we're good. And then I got to the Amphion event, and yeah,
That's such a good point because you need to reference based on what other songs sound like on that system. Because
yeah,
it was funny, but I was telling people, when I was giving like mixing tips and stuff like that, and I don't think I'm anywhere on your level, but what I was saying was things like, I tested my song on laptop speakers versus other songs of a similar genre on laptop speakers. I tested them on iPhone earbuds next to other songs on iPhone earbuds because that's what the majority of the world is going to listen to
yeah.
your music on. If you can't, like the best songs, I feel like you can still slightly hear the bass, you can still hear the hi-hats come through even on crappy speakers. You hear the elements.
And the thing is, you're biased by what your setup is.
Mm,
So, um, even though this room is a couple 100,000 euro room crazy design, it still has its flaws. So I still
hmm
needed to learn the room and I still needed to learn like, okay, there's around 120, there's a dip, so I need to be careful. If I have too much build up there, it might be really overwhelming somewhere else. Like that's all the stuff. A lot of people tend to think that when you have a studio of this size and stuff, then you don't have to think about that anymore.
yeah.
That's not true. You're just minimizing the issues and you're just making everything more precise, but there's no flat response anywhere.
Well,
So you need
everyone
to
wants the
learn
magic
everything.
pill, right?
Yeah, and everyone wants it to go by itself and just be fixed and have one plugin that does it all for you, but that's not how it works. Even
hmm
if you spend so much money on it, you still need to learn that and learn the craft and learn how it adapts.
Okay, so how do you learn it? Like, what are like, I don't know, if you look back at your career of becoming this like mixing idol, what are like three big takeaways or like, what are some things that clicked that made the difference?
I think a big thing was when I started to listen for detail and transients instead of just EQ curves and
Mm,
frequency responses. We're so caught up in, oh, this sounds almost similar because of the frequencies, and not like frequencies are super easy to manipulate, and detail and transient response is a lot harder. And basically, you just need to do it. Like
hmm
every mix I do, I check everywhere. I can sit in my car for an hour and just listen to songs that I've mixed. My entire Apple Music preference recommendations are completely fucked up because I just
Yeah,
listen to the stuff I mix
right,
all the time because I need to know on every system like where's this sitting exactly so I
right.
can learn what these speakers are doing. And I could do that for anywhere. Like an insane room like this or my living room or if I would sit in my hotel room in LA with a DT990. I need to
Yeah,
reference everything with stuff that I know is okay. I know this song is a little sharp around 2.5K. Okay, I know that here the kick is really loud. Okay, I know this low end is really nice in the subs. Does that come across everywhere or doesn't it?
Mixing is not objective either, right?
No.
It's also subjective. I listen to some of my favorite artists in the world. I'm just gonna say this. I'm not dissing anyone's mixing here, but I did listen to Travis Scott's new album and I didn't love the way it was mixed. Now I get there's a lot of artistic decisions going into that, right? There's like a lot of changes. Also, coming back to your point of mixing with transients and listening to transients rather than frequencies, that's actually something that completely changed mixing for me too. And specifically from one video, I don't know if you've seen this, either of you, but if you have, let me know. Bob Power does this talk about how to listen to a record, and he talks about volume changes, high, low. But then he also talks about, I don't think he specifically says transients, but he talks more about relationships. So he talks about instruments which are going ta 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 versus na na na. And when he did this whole explanation, and we'll leave a link to the video somewhere here, or we'll like flash it up on screen for the cut downs, but it just completely changes your concept of how to listen to a record and then therefore how to mix it, because everyone, when they approach mixing, especially in the early stages, thinks of frequency balance, right? Frequency and volume balance, but never think about soft versus hard transients.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, so that's one of the biggest mistakes then. And I think that is something that definitely is not talked about enough, because really the only things that are out there are reference plugins, which are mainly showing you the EQ. And, you know, a lot of it also, like, what would you say too about being able to trust your ears is something really important, and you don't get that overnight. That's something that you get over time.
Yeah, you really need to build that up. And yeah, I think that's also a bias of like, that's some people say I don't have good hearing, or I trash them too much partying, or I've got tinnitus, or uh some kind of damage there. And I always think like, but that's your reference. That's how you perceive the world.
Right.
Well, even if there's stuff getting in the way and you've got a wonky curve, you perceive everything in a wonky curve. So if your mix sounds a little wonky, well, it shouldn't to you, because that's your baseline. It should just sound good to you. And that's why referencing is so important. Because maybe you've got a really big dip in 4K, but if everything it gets perceived with a dip at 4K, then you'll be fine.
Can you make any mix sound amazing? Like if someone sends you just absolute garbage, can you make it sound incredible?
Trash in, trash out.
No. And I think also that's where a lot of people approach me like, hey, you've got a big studio at your disposal. You work with an analog console and the Neves and the CL1Bs and all of that stuff. You can make this work. No. If your production is not good, if your sample choice is not good, if your recording is not good, if you recorded with shitty acoustics, I can make it work as a song, but I can probably not get it to the quality level that your reference is at. And that's a shame, but yeah, if we're starting here, you can go to here, and if you're starting here, you can go to yeah.
Totally. 80% of the mix, I think, is in the production. And the point I always make to people is like, Fleetwood Mac, which is one of my favorite bands, and I use it because everyone knows Fleetwood Mac, right? It's just it's an easy reference. They didn't have a lot of kit. Do you know what I mean in terms of like mixing kit? Yeah, they had a Neve desk, or maybe it was a Harrison console, Neve console. But what they had was amazing musicians, great mics, pretty good rooms. It would have been a very basic effects chain, right, Thomas? It would have been like a preamp and a compressor and an EQ for the mic, something like that. And when it came to mixing, they didn't have like unlimited amount of digital EQs and FabFilter plugins. It was just kind of, the record would have been 80%, the engineer would have done 15%, and the mastering would have done 5%. And I think we need to like recall that. We need to remember that when you deliver a record, or most of the times when I'm producing a record, I'll deliver it with a limiter on it, and I know that it's not going to change that much from that. So I think we need to pay respect a little bit more sometimes to the classics and recognize that there's a reason why those records sound so good, and replicate those as best we can. Obviously, those practices in our own process.
And what about like spatial audio? Do you ever do any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we're actually getting into Atmos as well,
Love
and
it.
researching it a lot and seeing if that is the way to go for the studio. And we can actually, yeah, maybe we'll get an Atmos setup if all goes well. I hope so. I hope it is also the right business choice, because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, you're a business, and yeah, we can spend a lot of money on monitors for Atmos, but if there's no mixes to be done in Atmos, or Atmos just fades away in a year, then yeah, we've just spent 10, 20, 30, 50, 70K and
I think Amos is a
without.
conspiracy theory.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm
So I
sitting
know
back. I want to hear this.
okay, so I actually also know that Apple are some of the biggest investors in Atmos, so that kind of shows that there's a lot of potential there. But I think music came to a point where I felt that there was very little elitism anymore because the home studio was becoming so self-sufficient. And I think
Mm.
that was, positive and negative. Negative being Thomas, you and I receive multi-tracks or stems, which are very subpar. The positive being that the barrier to entry is much lower and everything has become digital, so it's kind of cheaper to make. But once you buy one pair of speakers, speakers are also at a pretty high standard these days, even the cheaper ones. Monitor companies are probably going, well, we got to sell more speakers. How
Yeah.
can we sell more? How can we sell more than just a pair? And Atmos is what, 5.1 and up, depending on your setup. Is that correct?
It starts at 7.1.4,
Right,
but
7.1 point. Well, there
it
you go. That's a
starts.
lot.
It starts.
It
Recommended
starts.
is now 9.1.6, I
Of
More
course it
believe.
speakers,
is.
more
Yeah.
problems.
So it's like 14 speakers. Okay, let's say
That's
12
all, bro.
speakers is,
How many speakers do you got? I got 25 in my studio.
yeah, but there's like, yeah, there's insane installations like Stamped over here in Amsterdam. Martin Garrix Studio has, I don't know how many, but it's basically a theater, a cinema room that has a lot of speakers for Atmos because they need to fill that room. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah. I think that's one side of the story, Fabio, but there's more to it as well.
Mm.
And I think, like back in the day, we had 5.1. This SSL console that I'm working on actually has quad, so a quad bus. So you had two speakers in the front, two speakers in the back, and you have a band pot on top of the actual left-right band pot, and that's front and back. So they tried back then, and then yeah, SSL was a big investor, and the labels were big investors. So that always stays, and that is always the same. The only thing that's different now is that it's not channel based anymore.
Mm.
Back then you had four channels, or five or six channels with 5.1. Now you've got object based. So it doesn't matter if you have four speakers or 40 speakers. You just get a more detailed representation of where I placed that sound
Mm.
in the room because I'm using an object which literally
Mhm.
says it's on this, let's call it a coordinate right now. It's like this height, that far to the left and that far to the front, which makes it that we can use it anywhere. And
Mhm.
with everything going to virtual reality and stuff,
Yeah.
I think can it can do something, but we need to adapt.
We're
And
definitely at the beginning of innovating something. My first experience with spatial audio was I actually went to visit Southampton University to film a video in an anechoic chamber, which is essentially the ultimate sonic space, right? That's the only acoustic treatment you would ever really need.
yeah, for
Um,
10 minutes.
Sorry?
For 10 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, after that, you don't want to be there anymore.
We did this test where I was like, I want you to lock us in here for as long as possible and we'll just see. And they're like, it's not that exciting. And I was like, we'll see. It wasn't that exciting, unfortunately. I was like, I was with my assistant. I was like, one of us is going to get eaten
Yeah,
by the
for
end
sure.
of this. Anyway, they then said, hey, do you want to come check out our spatial audio suite? I think they had something like probably around 40 small Genelec monitors in there. And I remember them saying to me, this is a while ago, this is 2019. And them saying to me, yeah, they showed me the software. And I was like, wow, so is this going to be used in music production? They're like, yes, we're just developing the software right now to have it integrated into DAWs.
Nice.
And I remember it being like quite a surreal experience. Like they were doing more soundscape style uh, sounds, so rainforests, waterfalls, like more nature based. But it was really surreal. Like you just couldn't
Yeah,
tell.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's like that's where that started. And I think that we just need to start working in that spatial audio space, and we need to start producing there as well, because the stage that we're in now is like when we went from mono to stereo.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're so used to producing in that one speaker, and now we've got stereo, and now we're putting drums on the left and bass on the right and the vocal on the left and then guitars on the right, and we're doing crazy stuff. That's where we're at now with Atmos. Oh, we've got 14 speakers. Let's make something tornado around us and make it go up, down, back, front. Let's go crazy. I think now is the time, and especially here, um, I want to really dive into production in Atmos. So if you're recording 4 backing vocals, that you can in the recording say, okay, cool. Backing vocal 1, left front top. Backing vocal 2, right front top. You put them in all 4 corners on top, and then you're going to record. And then you say, maybe this needs another microphone, or maybe we need to compress this differently, because now we're mainly recording in stereo, and then we're sending it off to someone to do an Atmos mix, and they go like, what do I do now? Okay, sure. I mean, it's as a mixer, the demo, the rough mix from an artist, from a producer, is so important to what I'm going to do with
Right.
the mix later. Uh, yeah, if I get complete freedom as a Atmos mixer, and someone can't really listen to it unless they're in a proper room, then we're kind of flying blind.
Right.
And we
That's a
need
good
to
point.
have that artist in the room and actually saying, whoa, this synth pad sounds sick if we have it coming from the back with the guitars in the front, because they complement each other amazingly. And you would never be able to make that decision if you're working on two speakers.
How good do you think the representation of spatial audio is in consumer headphones?
Yeah, that's binaural is still not really there. And I think binaural is gonna make or break Atmos.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if binaural is really getting as good as Atmos is sounding in a proper Atmos room, or close enough to it, then yeah, then we can really enjoy it. But now binaural is it's a bit weird also to mix in on headphones, because you really need to do drastic stuff to really notice, like, okay, where exactly is this sound being placed.
So, do you think once they bridge that technology, that will be the deciding factor as to whether Atmos is worth investing in?
For music, yeah. For film, it's already
Of course, yeah,
already there.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not going away. It's just the question if music is going to be in Atmos in 5 years.
I have one last question for you, by the way, which is on at least for me, that I wanted to make sure we fit in here, which is like for producers out there who want to get better at mixing, what are like 3 tips they could do that would be like quick? Like it wouldn't be because we don't have that much time right now.
Mhm.
Give me some actionable, like 3 actionable tips that would be helpful, maybe on stock plugins. No, not the analog gear this time. Yeah, exactly. And that would be super cool. People can take those actions and improve their mixes right now.
Okay. 3 things on the spot. First of all, is not even oh yeah, it is a plugin, but get a plugin that can stream your audio from your DAW to your phone. Mix to mobile is one. That's really great. You could also get listen to. If you have listened
Yeah.
to already, you could stream it to your phone. And really, we're scrolling on our phone all day, right? In your home studio, you're not going to get the best bass response and the most amount of low end. You can't go that loud. But the thing that's going to tell you your low end best is the door handle of your car and how your screen feels when you're scrolling Instagram. Like if you can feel that kick in a certain way, my thumb knows when low end is good on my phone now.
I love
Like
that.
I just play something on my phone and I literally grab it like this and I go, yeah, kick's good. And you're done. It's like it's that sort of stuff, just reference on a lot of things, and that doesn't cost you as much as an entire studio.
Yeah.
Um, Monitor on low levels is the next one, which is really hard sometimes, especially if you're producing. But you make the best decisions in on low levels. Like if you had to see the Mona Lisa through a straw, it still needs to be all there. Like maybe that's not the best
I kind of like that. That's actually pretty
comparison, but
dope.
like if you had to envision the entire world through a straw, you still need to be able to walk to where you need to go. And that's the same with monitoring on low levels. You get really small amount of space and everything needs to fit in there. And then when you take that straw away, everything opens up and everything that you get extra is extra. And that's nice. But that core that you're only seeing through your glasses with two little straw holes in there, it sh- that should paint the picture. And that also goes for mixing in stereo and mono collapsible. And um yeah, I don't know if that's 3, but
You got 2, but I think that works. Those are both really
yeah,
actionable, and yeah, those are things people could do right now. So
right.
If you could only walk away from your studio with one piece of gear except for your monitors, what would it be?
Um
his frame photo of Noise London.
yeah,
He
exactly.
has that tattooed already. He doesn't need
Okay,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
Can't bring that.
Um I also I want to say converters interface, but that's kind of like that's the monitoring chain.
No,
So
that
let's
counts. That
make it
counts.
but let's make it something interesting. My 2 Neve 1073 modules with a rack, of course, because otherwise I can't do it. But yeah, those are my ATCs and a good monitor. Stick me on a beach somewhere where it's sunny, and I'll mix records all day.
I'll book the flight.
All right. Hey, let's do it.
Thank you, Thomas, so much for joining us for this amazing podcast and sharing all your wisdom. If you are listening or watching this podcast, don't forget that it is sponsored by boombox.io. We have most recently released a playlist feature which is available for free. So you can sign up to Boombox and then you can share your music as a playlist, but then everyone who receives it doesn't have to sign up to Boombox. So you can send out demos of your music. This is the new professional industry standard. Forget SoundCloud, forget Dropbox, forget Google Drive. Do things properly. Get your tracks to people the way they want them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tomas, for joining us. And where can people find you on the Instagrams and the other socials?
Yeah, basically my handle everywhere is Thomas Vopstal. It didn't let me take my real name, but hey, Thomas Van Opstal is my real name, and then yeah.
Sweet. And you can find me at Music by Lucas. You can find Boombox at boombox.io. And Fabio, where can they find you?
You can find me at noise with a Z_London. Just hit me up on Instagram.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.